Good evening. I'm J Russell. Thank you for tuning in for a special edition of KTSM's Black History Month special. Now, over the next hour, you'll hear about stories of successful African Americans in our community who have made a difference in a positive manner. A remarkable woman, military moms who raise phenomenal young men that are celebrated on the world stage. And I'll give you a tour of my opinion, the Black History Museum of El Paso. And it's important to know that Black history is El Paso history. Now, a little hidden history here in the Sun City. Only by good luck, Bob Wingo was brought here to the borderland, but he tells me that he never imagined visiting the White House and meeting multiple presidents and becoming a successful business owner right here in El Paso.
I consider myself more of an El Pasoan than anything. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. I love El Paso. I think El Paso has been extremely good to me.
Bob Wingo moved to El Paso in 1960 after his father was stationed at Fort Bliss. He attended Bel Air High School and served in the Army from 1966 to 1968.
Promised God that if I lived through Vietnam, I would give college a shot. Didn't promise I'd finish, I just said I'd give it a shot.
Wingo graduated from UTEP with his Bachelor of Business Administration marketing degree in 1973. After graduating, Wingo worked for an apparel company, Billy the Kid, where he moved up quickly, and that led to a vice president position with Sanders Company Advertising. In 1984, he became a partner, and the company is now Sanders Wingo. The creative advertising agency has seen tremendous progress.
J. Russell, we've been very fortunate. Over the years, we've worked with accounts like, and still do, AT&T. We've worked on Kentucky Fried Chicken. We've worked on General Motors. And we've worked on State Farm Insurance. The world is changing. The browning of America is happening. What you're seeing biracial ads on TV. You're seeing more people of color on TV, both Latino, Latinx, African American, Asian, you name it. I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more of it. The elevation of the initiatives have happened partially now because of the recent events, the George Floyd's.
Sticking with the subject of civil rights and race relations being a part of his life, one of his proudest achievements resides in Washington, D.C.
We raised the first $100,000 for the building of the Martin Luther King Memorial right here in El Paso, Texas.
Along with his fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha, the UTEP graduate helped raise $122 million, and a piece of that history is right here in El Paso.
We each got a shovel, and I felt it was more important for our community to have the shovel at the McCall Center than sitting in my office.
Wingo told me that he had the opportunity to move to New York, but chose to stay right here in the Sun City.
I don't even know how you measure the value and the benefit that we have here in El Paso. This is home.
J Russell, KTSM 9 News. Now, Bob Wingo also has a daughter who followed in his footsteps. Her name is Leslie Wingo. She is now president of Sanders Wingo in Austin, and she told me that no one could ever fill her father's shoes. And now let me introduce you to our El Paso Black History panelists. We have a bunch of people here that I'm very happy to see. We have Raymond Cartwright, who's here to share his experiences as a young soldier when racial segregation existed on Fort Bliss, and I still cannot believe what he had to endure. And then also we have Tamika Henry. She was born and raised here in El Paso. She's from Hanks High School. She's a graduate of there, currently the president of El Paso Black Young Leaders. Then lastly, we have Dr. Ochika Lozi, who is El Paso's top infectious disease doctor, and he's here to discuss basically people who are battling with COVID-19. And then also the question that I ask myself every single day coming on the news, why so many little African Americans are getting the COVID vaccine? But I want to start off by going back to Mr. Wingo. In the African American community, growing up, you'll hear about it. You're either good at sports or you could sing, but there's plenty of other options out there. And I want to start first with Mr. Cartwright. I know that you're still teaching right now. What other options are out there for African Americans, Mr. Cartwright?
Quite a few options, but it seems one of the main one would be in the teaching profession. In my case, I'm more military, just Army all the way, and I used my experience in instructing in the Army to go on to be an instructor with Park University. And that has been very, very satisfying to me. as I mentioned to a group earlier, my daughter is also a teacher. My granddaughter's a teacher there in Galveston County. So I like to say it's genetic.
There you go. You know, I know you were probably pushing it on them too, that education is important. And going to you, Dr. Alozie, going into the medical field as well, I've only been in El Paso since July 2020, but I don't see too many African Americans in the profession. Speak about how beneficial that is if a young person wants to go into that field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Mr. Cartwright kind of nailed it, right? Education is key. And whether you're actually doing the education in a classroom or you're doing it one-on-one with the patients that you see in the medical field, I think that's important. I always tell people you can't have a conversation about us without us, and it's very different, the relationship that you can have with somebody that looks like you in whatever community of color it is versus somebody that doesn't. And so I think it's critically important that we enable young black kids to want to go into medical professions, be it physician, nursing, whatever the case may be. And so I think that's one of the great things about Texas Tech, the Burrell College of Medicine, and a host of other organizations locally.
There are a lot of outstanding schools here in the borderland. And Tamika, I'm going to come to you next. Been knowing you for a little while with the El Paso Black Young Leaders, but how do you feel about just African Americans having other venues to go out to and showing on this show right now? You could be successful from it as well.
Yes, of course. And I think one way that you can be successful is getting involved in your community, taking a look at the people in your community and seeing different ways that you can engage and inspire. And with El Paso Young Black Leaders, that is exactly what our organization does. Our goals are to connect, engage, and inspire through personal and professional development experiences.
Well, I like how that sounds. And then Mr. Cartwright as well, you know, with your experiences being here since I believe it was the 1950s in El Paso, so you've seen El Paso transform into what it is today in 2021. Tell me about how many other opportunities there are for African Americans now in 2021 compared to back when you initially moved here.
Quite a few now if you have the education. If you don't and you're fighting the labor market, it's really would really be rough. Again, though, it's still better now than it was the first time I came to El Paso back in 1952. Then the market was strictly stoop labor, but we did have the Bracero program where a lot of workers would come from El Paso. I'm sorry, from Juarez rather, to El Paso and work in the agricultural field.
Well, you'll want to stick around, Borderland, because Mr. Cartwright has a testimony and a story to tell, speaking about his experiences from the 1950s to now. I'm going to bring my panelists back a little bit later, but coming up next, one woman who moved from Detroit to the Sun City is spicing up the fashion game here in El Paso. And also ahead, two moms that raise young men that shine on the world stage. Representing the 915, you're locked into a special edition of KTSM 9 News at 6 as we honor Black history. Welcome back to the KTSM Black History Special. One remarkable woman decided to follow her dreams, and they were big dreams. When she switched over careers, and what she did is she focused on clothing. Now, her new focus is giving back to the community as well, and our KTSM 9 News anchor, Susie Castillo, has the story.
It's a good feeling, and for everything that I've been blessed to not have to suffer through, you know, this pandemic. So it's just like, for me, I don't know any other way but to give back.
From criminal justice to fashion design. While El Paso native Kelly Evans switched careers to follow her dreams, she continues to serve others.
She also looking out for other people. Sometimes I think she overextends herself.
She shares her talent with those in need, from donating handmade masks to helping raise donations for senior citizens in need and creating special moments for high school seniors.
The appreciation and the happiness on these recipients' faces when they receive this is phenomenal. It's a great feeling.
With a prom pamper package, she surprises high school girls with everything they need to have the perfect night.
And we were able to give her a prom dress, nail service, hair services, hair and makeup. It was a prom dream for her.
As she's living her dream, she's helping others reach their own. using her business to give women a place to shine.
We provide resources and opportunities for models, especially women of color.
Her husband, being one of her many fans, is the one who pushed her to follow her own dreams of being a fashion designer.
I found a way to motivate her to where she didn't realize it, but she was living out what she wanted to do, and then it sparked a flame in her. I believe you are a very genuine, trustworthy, loyal, kind, open heart, open-minded person, and you deserve everything that comes to you.
Susie Castillo, KTSM 9 News.
Now, she is also a member of El Paso Young Black Leaders. Now we're going to bring back Tamika Henry, the president of the organization. And before we get to her, I got to say that Kelly Evans is the fashionista of El Paso. I don't know if you were able to see that mask there. But coming back to you, Tamika, I want to ask you, how do you feel about a black woman moving all the way from Detroit to another state to get back to your home, El Paso?
I think it's amazing. I love when people who aren't from El Paso, or black people who aren't from El Paso, come to El Paso and say amazing things about it, especially when there aren't many people who look like us. It's a great feeling.
And speaking about giving back to the community, I just recently found out about this when I moved here at El Paso Young Black Leaders. Tell me, what do they do for the community?
Yes, so El Paso Young Black Leaders is a Texas nonprofit organization that seeks to connect, engage, and inspire the young black community here in El Paso. So we're working on many different projects. We've hosted a Women's Health and Wellness Summit. We've also provided a technology scholarship for high school students here in El Paso. And we have some exciting things coming up, exciting collaborations with other organizations here in El Paso.
And I'm looking forward to it. I remember covering an event with the El Paso Black Young Leaders where you rewarded students, giving them an iPad that completed a certain amount of community service. And one of those young people was a Franklin High School student that was just accepted into Yale.
Yes, she was amazing. I remember her scholarship application and us just knowing that the iPad that we provided to her was going to help her with her college applications was a humbling experience. And I'm so proud of her.
Yes, I gotta love that. Well, thank you, Tamika. Moving on, coming up, a shocking moment in Olympic history has a tie right here in the borderland. You're watching a special edition of KTSM 9 News at 6 as we honor Black history. Welcome back to the Black History Special. Although they're on top of the world right now in their professions, R&B singer Khalid making those smooth hits, and the Green Bay Packers' Aaron Jones shaking up the defense, breaking people's ankles out there. They're always representing El Paso, and they wouldn't be where they're at right now without their moms. KTSM 9 sports reporter Colin Deaver has the story.
It's been a meteoric rise.
Love to see you shine in the night like the diamond you are.
That's been completely unexpected.
Not to be denied.
Have you even been a little bit surprised at how quickly this has happened for him?
This ain't normal. This ain't something that that happens to people. Of course I'm surprised.
Linda Wolf, the mother of double platinum pop star Khalid, can relate to Virgis Jones, a mother of 4, including former UTEP star Alvin and his twin brother,
Right up the middle and more. Jones makes a cut.
NFL Pro Bowler Aaron Jones.
I never in my wildest dreams thought he would get drafted and he would be at this point in his life.
Linda and Virgis have more in common than their famous sons. Career military women, they each served over 20 years in the Army before recently retiring.
Mother Virgis, also in the Army, 27 years of service.
Constant moves and deployments overseas, of course, were never easy.
It's very hard on your kids. It's very hard when you have to leave them and have to do your duty.
But their mothers think that lifestyle played a role in who Aaron, Alvin, and Khalid have become.
The military families out there are strong. We have to be, and I think that has a lot to do with the success of our kids.
They know, hey, this is what my parents expect. If I start something, I'm going to finish it.
Khalid's love of music was, of course, instilled in him by his mother. A member of the prestigious Army Band for over 12 years.
I was able to travel. I was able to do a lot of things as far as perform on the Red Square in Russia, perform for royalty in England.
Can we just talk? Grammy nominations have rolled in since Khalid graduated from America's high school. Mom is his biggest supporter and maybe also his harshest critic.
This is what I do. This is what I know how to do. I'm very honest with him when it comes to that. So the fact that I can say, oh, this is so good. I'm so proud of that he is just honed in on his gift.
As for Aaron Jones, well, he's become one of the top running backs in the NFL for the Green Bay Packers over the last 4 seasons.
Slips one tackle, and he's into the end zone for another Packer touchdown.
Burgess has gotten to see Aaron through different eyes this past year, her baby becoming a father to a baby of his own.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing because he's the best father. I'm just so thankful, and I get so overwhelmed by that because I'm just so proud of him.
Mother and son have a touching tradition every time Aaron scores a touchdown.
I gotta get up on to my mom. Yeah, I gotta get up to my mom.
The balls are like plugging in holes, meaning that the time that we spent away from each other and the sacrifices they made and all the holes that I'm trying to fill in my life, of times that I miss with them, it's just like plugging up holes that makes me kind of feel whole again.
I've been seeing angels in my living room.
The Army may have brought both families to El Paso, but the Sun City has become their home, and now they're giving back. Linda heads the Great Khalid Foundation that provides scholarships, backpacks, and other resources to local children. Burgess is involved in the A&A All the Way Foundation that has done bicycle giveaways, football camps, and more.
The community has kept me here because we do so much with this foundation to help El Paso community out. It's best that I be here to kind of make those moves.
We just want to make a difference. The foundation just truly wants to make a difference in any way. That doesn't cost them nothing. Why not do it?
It's the strength of 2 mothers that continue to push El Paso's finest to greater heights.
I knew his potential, so it was up to mothers to be able to make sure that they're on the right track.
That was Colin Deaver reporting. Sticking with great sports moments here in El Paso, possibly the most important to date for the NCAA history was March 19th, 1966. That was the night a team of 5 black starters made history by winning a national championship. Texas Western College, now UTEP, defeated the University of Kentucky. That win accelerated the advancement of black athletes in the South. All-white leagues like the ACC, the Southwestern Conference, and SEC became integrated within the next 2 years. Led by Don Haskins, a gruff, straight-talking coach known as the Bear, the Miners lit up the 1965-66 regular season with a 23-1 record. A tight-knit group of blacks, whites, and 1 Hispanic, the team finished the season ranked 3rd in the final AP college basketball poll. Now, after winning the previous 7 gold medals, the U.S. thought they had the 1972 Summer Olympics on lock. But one of the most bizarre events that took place changed the course of history. KTSM 9 News sports anchor Colin Deaver speaks with a member of the team that's currently coaching for the Andrus basketball team.
By any metric, it's one of the most infamous moments in Olympic history.
The game was stolen from the Americans. The shamelessness of it all is laughable.
And lifelong El Pasoan Jim Forbes was right in the middle of it.
When it happened, we had no idea that it would gain such traction.
Forbes, who starred at Bel Air and UTEP and played briefly in the NBA, was a member of the 1972 United States Olympic basketball team.
That's one of the joys of my life as an athlete.
But that team is famous for the wrong reasons.
Arguably, it might go down as the most controversial basketball game in history, the way it finished and the stakes. And there was a gold medal. There was a gold medal riding on that.
Bedlam has taken over here at the basketball hall.
September 9th, 1972, the Olympic gold medal game between the United States and the Soviet Union played in Munich, Germany in the middle of the Cold War. Tipping off at midnight to accommodate the American TV audience, the clash was nip and tuck throughout. Forbes made a jump shot to get the U.S. within 1 point late, and with just 3 seconds left, Doug Collins drained 2 free throws to give the Americans a 50-49 lead.
2 of the most clutch free throws in basketball history, in my opinion.
That's when things got wacky. Mistakes by the officiating crew and the scores table allow the Soviets to inbound the ball with a chance to win, not once.
They're changing the clock is what they're doing. They're going back to 3 seconds.
Not twice.
Everybody trying to calm everybody else down, and it would appear it's all over. Wow, what a finish, the United States.
But 3 times. On the first try, it was ruled that the Soviets called a timeout before the inbounds occurred. On the second attempt, officials decided that the clock started too early. On the third Soviet inbounds,
now we're being told the scoreboard is not correct. There is time for the Russians to go to their big man, Alexander Belov. They're going to try. Alexander Belov. And this time it is over.
Here's the irony of it. It gets talked about a lot, but at the same time, had we won that game, no one would ever talk about the 72 Olympic team again.
The Americans protested the 51-50 defeat, but the International Olympic Committee upheld the Soviets' victory. Team USA refused to take the medal stand and accept their silver medals, a decision that Forbes and his teammates stand by to this day.
We didn't earn a silver medal. We earned a gold medal. We won that gold medal in regulation time. And that's just it.
It wasn't about, that we were some sore loser and we weren't going to go out there and do it. We felt in our hearts we'd won the game.
A rash of injuries ended Forbes' promising career before it truly got off the ground, but he's still living his dream. For 37 straight years, he's been a history teacher and a high school basketball coach here in El Paso, leading Riverside and Andress to the Final Four in 1995 and 2015, respectively.
Putting it together, I think, was the toughest part on his end. And he figured that being disciplined was going to be the success to our team, and he did a good job of keeping us intact. I noticed what I needed to do from him, and I still instill that in our program here.
He's won hundreds of basketball games, but his role as a history teacher is perhaps more impactful. Part of his childhood was spent in the segregated South, and when Forbes teaches the civil rights movement, he draws from his own personal experiences.
A lot of kids will watch video and film and read about it, but it wasn't that long ago that I saw that. You're blessed to see things progress.
Bel Air has retired his jersey. Riverside named its gym after Forbes in 2018.
I'm really proud of him, to get in the classroom and be a great teacher and a great role model for these young people. And I'm just so happy he's carved out a wonderful niche in life.
He's 68 now, but Forbes says he's not ready to hang up the whistle.
I'm doing exactly what I said I wanted to do in 1973. I'll know when it's time, and right now it's not time.
Whenever that time comes, Jim Forbes will forever be an El Paso legend.
He stayed home, graduated from here, stayed at UTEP, went to the league, got hurt, went to the Olympics, represented El Paso. When it's all said and done, Coach Jim Forbes should be on the Mount Rushmore of most important figures in El Paso.
I was Colin Beaver reporting. Coming up, a local legend shares his bout with COVID-19 and the aftermath he's enduring. You're watching a special edition of KTSM 9 News at 6 as we honor Black history. A Black history living legend resides right here in El Paso. We caught up with the Black Klansman himself, Ron Stallworth, who is currently recovering from COVID-19. And he has a message for the minority community when it comes to vaccines. Here's KTSM 9 News anchor Daniel Marin.
Suffice to say, Ron Stallworth is used to taking on challenges. As you may know by now, he once infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan while working as a police detective in Colorado. His book, Black Klansman, turned into an Oscar-winning film.
I am experiencing now after effects of it.
But last fall, COVID-19 infiltrated his home. Ron and his wife, Patsy, testing positive. Patsy even hospitalized for 2.5 weeks.
She came very close to losing her life.
Both have mostly recovered now. Here are photos of Ron receiving his vaccine a few days ago, something he says he'd like to see happen more often for minorities. You see, Latino and Black communities lag behind when it comes to vaccinations, according to state and federal data.
I can understand why minority groups would in general not trust government.
Ron acknowledges that some of that lag comes from skepticism of the vaccine, in the black community particularly.
There's a history behind it. Go back to the Tuskegee Institute experiments.
The Tuskegee experiment was carried out by the U.S. government from the 1930s to 70s. Health authorities used black men as guinea pigs to see what would happen if syphilis were left untreated. The program participants thought they were receiving doses of medicine, but they were not.
Letting them believe that they were being given a drug to help their condition.
The U.S. government formally apologized for the experiment in 1997 and labeled it what it was: racism. But Ron says none of that should keep people of color from getting their vaccines today.
That dark chapter was in. We're in the now. Unless we see something that points us in the direction that negativity is ongoing and continuing, that we need to move forward from that.
Reporting for Honoring Black History, I'm Daniel Marin, KTSM 9 News.
Very powerful story there on how serious this virus is, and I hope a speedy recovery for both of them. Now, when I'm anchoring on the news Monday to Friday to 5 to 7 a.m., we're waiting to hear the latest COVID-19 numbers to know how many people died and how many new cases there are. That's why I'm bringing back Dr. Alozi to discuss the recent report brought to my attention by El Paso Matters. Now, this is the title of it: Black El Pasoans, men underrepresented in COVID-19 vaccinations, and state data indicate. Now, Dr. Alozi, we're African-American men. What needs to change to point blank just save lives?
I think it's about equity, right? So people often talk about equality, which is giving everybody the same access and the same approach. But if you understand that we're about 3 to 4% of the population in El Paso and less than 2% of the vaccines, there has to be an equity, right? So you find ways to get it into the black community, whether it's through churches, whether it's through ICC, whether it's through Alpha Psi Alpha, the Kappas, whomever it is. Black Girls Were On, the Links, Jack and Jill. But all those organizations, they're tied into the community, and they'll be able to get vaccine. I think, though, Jay, it's also important for people to understand the supply chain's not there, right? There's not enough vaccine. And so, but in the next few months there will be, and if the planning goes into doing that now, we'll be able to get it into all parts of the community.
And that's what really needs to happen. And another dilemma that's going on right now, I know the elderly right now, African-American El Pasoans, who are not aware of just how to get vaccinated. They're using the telephones right now. And just this Tuesday, we had another event going on, the Super Senior Sign Up, and that's residents 75 years or older. Now, there was 2,500 appointments available online and 1,000 appointments made available through the telephone. Dr. Alozi, just how could we help our senior citizens, because they have the wealth of knowledge that the young people need to hear about just to know where we came from?
Yeah, again, I think you sort of called it out, right? Whether it's online or by phone, I mean, thankfully there are phone appointments right now, and we heard the great news that the city and the county are going to join forces to streamline the registration process. I think that'll be huge. But again, I think that as a community, we need to get that information out to the churches and the various community organizations, because like you said, they're tied into the community. They know how to go find those super seniors. They know how to go find those members of their parishioners that have diabetes or hypertension, or they know have difficulty coming into church if church is in person. And so I think that really has to be part of the key.
And you know, something that's interesting too, I was speaking with one of my producers a little bit earlier today, and she was telling me that the last event that they had going on, normally the vaccinations were up in 2 or 3 minutes. This time it was 7 hours. So we're talking about people I just don't think that they know. So if you're watching this, even if you do need help, reach out to maybe your grandsons, your granddaughters, your sons, your daughters to get that internet access to help you out to get that vaccine, because just like we spoke about, this is not the Tuskegee experiments anymore. This is 2021. A lot of research has been done on this. Dr. Alozi, thank you again. We'll have you back a little bit later in the show.
All right.
Now, also, blacks make up for 4% of El Paso's population, but less than 1% of El Pasoans are vaccinated, whom race and ethnicity is known according to El Paso Matters. And for the African Americans out there hesitant about getting the vaccine, I get it. It's hard not to think about those Tuskegee experiments that started in 1932, treating a group of black men for syphilis in order to track their progress. Like you heard Daniel Marine said in the package, no medical care was given. Some men died, went blind, or just typically went insane. Basically, they were guinea pigs. That's why I'm moderating a free virtual event going on March 13th called Replacing Myths and Facts. It's an informational call for minorities communities. Dr. Alozie will be on that panel along with Dr. Ian Moore, and he's a researcher that's involved with testing the Moderna vaccine. We'll have that information on KTSM.com. Coming up, I'll take a look inside the unofficial African American Museum of El Paso. You're locked into a special edition of KTSM 9 News at 6 as we honor Black history. Although El Paso is predominantly Hispanic, the city has a deep history of African Americans who have made their mark on the 915. And if you're searching for Black history, I'll tell you where to find it. It's in central El Paso at the McCall Neighborhood Center. You can't talk about Black History Month in El Paso, Texas without mentioning the McCall Center, which was established in 1984 by Leona Washington, who had a vision to bring out all the African American history right here in the borderland in one place in the neighborhood.
I got to be honest with you. When I first got here in El Paso, I never knew anything like this existed.
The McCall Center starts with Marshall and Ola Lady McCall because this was their house, and they dedicated this house to the McCall Center in 1937.
Mr. McCall was the first African-American mail carrier in El Paso, and Mrs. McCall was a longtime English teacher at Douglas Schools.
We call Mrs. Washington actually the mother of the McCall Center. She had a vision to make the McCall Center a historical icon for the African-American community.
NAACP was founded in 1909. The charter for El Paso was in 1914. And as far as the McCall Center and the interaction with the NAACP, it is a safe haven for us.
What other organizations come out here to meet and they have this space to come to?
Oh, a bunch of civic organizations, fraternities, sororities, the Pandaletta Council, churches.
I see not only that we do exist here in this community, but when I see everything that we've done for the community and how the different organizations here play a role in the community and what they do, it makes me proud. It makes me proud as an African-American woman here in a predominantly Hispanic community.
If you're looking for any beautiful pictures of African-American history or even learn a little more about the Buffalo Soldiers, you can come here to the McCall Center and learn about all that history under one roof that's been here since 1984. I'm J Russell for KTSM 9 News. And now I welcome back our guests, Mr. Raymond Cartwright, Tamika Henry, and Dr. Alozie as well. Now, walking into the McCall Neighborhood Center, it brought tears to my eyes. I'll be honest with you. I knew about the impact that was made here by African Americans. And speaking about impact, now we're going to discuss some topics to the panel that they would like to talk about. And Tamika, I'm going to start with you. I believe that every race has heard something about this, but what bothers you most about microaggressions?
I think what bothers me the most is the assumptions that people make of me because I'm Black, or comments that are made to me. For example, people have made comments of how well I speak, or make comments about what my hair looks like, or just comments to make me feel very uncomfortable with being in my own skin.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes, I get the same thing about the clothing that I wear. There's some microaggressions that you gentlemen want to share as well that you've heard about?
I mean, it always makes me laugh, right, when the person says, hey, you're really eloquent for a Black guy. And I'm like, I'm the most eloquent person in this building, probably. So I think those are one of those things where you just laugh. And I think one of the things about microaggressions, though, we do have to be careful with is that intent is important. Right, and so in as much as people may have some ignorance around certain things or they haven't been exposed because of their life experience, intent matters. And so help the person learn, help them understand, help them get to a place where they're better for the next person. Right, and I think that's really critically important as well.
And Dr. Alozie, I'm going to add this on there too. It matters how they say it too. If they're trying to be rude about it, You know, I have to clap back. No, I'm just playing. Don't do that at all, people out there. Do what Dr. Alozzi said and be very nice about it. I want to ask you, Mr. Cartwright, I know that you probably heard just several things in your time being here.
My biggest problem is trying to not be too sensitive because of my background. As you know, I grew up as a black boy in Alabama in the 1940s, so you can imagine the types of experiences we had back then. So I try to see things as they are rather than what I'd like for them to be, but I still don't want to get too over-aggressive about it and assume every little slight is, you know, racially motivated.
And to be honest, too, when people are throwing out these microaggressions, for the most part, I don't think that they're really thinking about it. I think it's just something that's in their head. They're just speaking out about it. And it could be about anything. It just doesn't have to be African Americans. It could be Hispanic people. It could be gay people. It could be just anybody, to be honest. But I do appreciate the panel speaking about that. Now, coming up next, I've been looking forward to this. Mr. Cartwright is going to be speaking about his experiences coming up. But I also want to talk about what's going on for 2020, for what was going on and for basically what shook the world last year when 46-year-old George Floyd was handcuffed to the ground and then the officer put his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds until he died. And there's countless names out there. Breonna Taylor, she was just asleep in her home when officers broke through her door and shot her 8 times. Just really think about that, 8 times. And then Bolton Jean, he was shot by an officer after she entered the wrong apartment. I remember being in Louisiana with Alton Sterling. He was selling CDs in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. When these incidents happen, I just want to ask the full panel about this. When other races come out to you, how do you want them to approach you about the situation without them being disrespectful about it? And Tamika, I'll start with you.
I think really just recognizing and acknowledging the situation for what it is, for what we can see. And I think, you know, individuals from other races or other backgrounds, when they come to me and ask me, you know, what is my opinion about the situation, I appreciate that because they're trying to learn, they're trying to understand. And you learn so much when you know, speak to someone on an issue that they might be experiencing as well. So I think just, you know, trying to make that connection, trying to understand, and think about ways that we can move forward and do better as a community.
I like how that sounds. I'm going to ask you the same thing, Dr. Alozzi and Mr. Cartwright. How do you feel? How should people approach you when these events happen? Because unfortunately, all 4 of us know that it's going to happen again.
I want the other races to be honest and not try to give me an answer, well, oh, that doesn't exist anymore. You are tied up in the past, or that's in the old days. We all know that all of us have some bias, and even we blacks have a bias. So I hate for someone to tell me I don't have a prejudiced bone in my body. And when I hear those words, that's like a dog whistle, and it's letting me know I better be careful with that particular person.
Dr. Alozzi?
Yeah, I think it's all about representation. Right, I said it in the beginning, you can't have a conversation about us without us, and that's whether you're Hispanic, African American, Asian, LGBTQ, whatever the case may be, and I think that's the important thing. And so wherever you are in an educational setting, a corporate setting, in a community setting, it's critically important that you have a seat at the table. And so the organizations that pay lip service to it and only think about it in February, those aren't the organizations that you need to be engaged in. I mean, I think it's great that we're having this conversation, but don't remember me only in February. Remember me in June. Remember me in November. Remember us across the course of the year and everybody else that needs to have a seat at the table. And I think that's the key, right? If we can get to a point where we're consistently having this dialogue, and the dialogue is honest, transparent, and open, then I think we'll move forward. But again, we understand that the world is what the world is. It's not fair, and we have to keep on striving to make it better for not just ourselves, but our children and the generations to come.
I completely agree with you, because I believe just education is important. Before you have one of these conversations with a black person, African American person, just educate yourself before you actually start that dialogue, because it really helps out in terms of us having that conversation with you if somebody is prepared to have it. Well, thank you guys so much. Now, in our next panel that's coming up, I'm going to be speaking directly with Mr. Cartwright, talking about what was going on with him when he moved here in 1952. We'll be right back. Now, at 87 years young, I welcome Mr. Raymond Cartwright. Now, he's here to drop some knowledge on all of us. So, Mr. Cartwright, thank you for being here. It is sincerely a pleasure. Now, President Truman signed an executive order in 1948 to integrate the armed forces. And I want you to tell me about your experience at Fort Bliss during the 1950s.
In May 1952, I was assigned to a segregated Army post, assigned to an all-Negro Army regiment, and at that time I completed my high school GED test and qualified for an Army school. I wound up coming to Fort Bliss for a 9-month course in radar and electronics training, and at the time I found Fort Bliss to be partially segregated and partially integrated. The anti-aircraft school students were integrated, but most of the rest of the post was segregated. There was a colored barbershop, a colored movie theater, a colored service club, a colored chapel, and you know, etc. South Fort Bliss, along what was then named Robert E. Lee Road, housed the colored soldiers. When I returned to Fort Bliss again in 1957, I was newly married. The post was pretty well integrated then, but El Paso was not. In town, the only movie theater we could attend was the Fiesta Drive-In Theater, which was way out in the middle of nowhere on Mesa. Only restaurants that my bride and I could patronize were along Alameda, and the housing in town for married soldiers living off post was really bad. We had a hard time finding a nice place to live. We had families living in basements. They rented a room, or the ones that could afford to buy a house, they were normally small houses down in the Ranchland area. And things are quite different now, but well, it's much better now. Mm-hmm.
You know, when you were telling me that a little bit before, I just couldn't imagine living like that, and seeing you're going through it, and you know, you're so positive and you're so chipper as you came into the newsroom. It just speaks to a testament that, you know, you're going to go through some things sometime, and you know, that's the best way to get through it. I was telling some of my coworkers that if those same rules applied then now, if everybody was going to Starbucks, I most likely wouldn't be able to go with them. And it's just amazing to hear your story, Mr. Cartwright. And you spoke a little bit about this before, but how have you seen El Paso change since you first arrived in town? And what do you think the city could do a better job of making things better for African Americans?
It's changed a lot because of an influx of new people. Like my hometown in Alabama, it was 25,000 people there when I left. Now it's almost 250,000. So they've had an influx of people from east, west, and wherever, and it changed. El Paso has done the same. And you know, being military, living on base, it was quite made quite a bit of difference, and I didn't have to compete in the job market in town. You know.
Well, you know, I didn't want to share this publicly, but you know, since you did share it, I've had a great experience in El Paso since I've been here. I moved here in July 2020, but sometimes I do go running downtown, and I told a couple of my coworkers about this too. I'm just jogging downtown, and a car pulled up beside me and called me the N-word. And I had my headphones in, so I just, you know, kind of kept running type of thing, but then they stopped their truck, and then they put their head outside the window, and then they said it. And you know, everything went out the window. I wasn't a member of, you know, KTSM anymore or like whatever. I just kind of just saw red. It just really took me back into, you know, when George Floyd died and just people weren't understanding what African Americans were going through. And now hearing about that and hearing about your experience, that kind of stuff has been going on since, what, the 1950s? It's still going on today. And it just kind of makes me think that, you know, for you, you went through it, Mr. Cartwright, your wife did too, and, you know, you're the reason that I'm able to sit here on this desk, you know, today, being the only African-American male in El Paso. So I want to thank you sincerely for just withstanding all of that racism, the discrimination, the microaggressions, all of that together. Mr. Cartwright, thank you so much for coming on the show today, sir. Thank you for tuning in for the KTSM Black History Special. We'll have more information online. Have a good evening.